What if it rained food? What if Earth was a cube? What if we had 9 lives? What if bits could fly? It's absurd. If money grew on trees, if we didn't have knees, if we walked through life slightly magnetical, it's absurd. Absurd Hypotheticals.
Hello everybody and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee, Ben Storms, and special guest Bill Hobson. Say hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started. So, what do you do?
I am in the great state of Michigan, where we do a number of things. I host 3 different podcasts. I host a real television show and a real terrestrial radio program. I serve as a communications consultant for a number of nonprofit organizations where they're really good at what they do, but they're not as good at telling their story. And really the overarching umbrella mission statement for my company is, we tell your story. And one of my favorite things to do is to help educate audiences in all settings about the unique things happening either for maybe a homeless shelter or some other form of a charitable organization. And then in the other side of my world, I host all these podcasts and I do a TV show about golf and travel. And it's a very strange brew that my resume would contain. So there will be weekends. In fact, I'm in the midst of a TV shooting schedule right now where I'm at a 5-star resort that for a lot of golfers would be on their bucket list. And then the middle of the week, as will be the case tomorrow, I head to a pair of homeless shelters about 5 hours away to do interviews with people who have come through their programs and have a great story to tell. So wow. My world is really kind of strange. I'm my own boss because I'm a lousy employee, and I created this. Yeah, I created this whole thing years ago, and thankfully we've been blessed. And apparently there's a lot of need out there for help in telling your story because both for-profit and nonprofit clients and partners have come along and said, please come help us. So earlier this morning, I did a 3-hour seminar for a school that was getting ready to start its school year, and I sat down and did a communications session with teachers, administrators, and all that kind of thing. So I'm a little hoarse because I've been talking for about half the day, but did manage to squeeze in a round of golf before I connected with you guys.
Perfect. Why wouldn't you?
Thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep meaning to start golf because I work in construction, so I'm like a consultant in the construction industry, and half of the meetings that go up on the higher levels are done on the golf course.
Man, you think you need to start playing golf? I work in the financial industry. I really need to start playing golf.
It's really funny. I consider myself a golf person, not because I watch, play, or interact with golf at all. But in the one time, like a summer ago, where I actually got finally to like a driving range and got like one lesson, within like 3 minutes, I'm like, oh, this is something I like to do. This fits me.
It is fun.
But then I didn't go back because, life is busy.
Right.
Well, depending on when all this drops, golf has its upside if you're really good at it. This weekend coming up, the Tour Championship for the PGA Tour, the winner will take home $15 million. The second place finish is $10 million. And this is like their big finale, and it's ridiculous amounts of monopoly money. But for the rest of us who are clinically insane, we just like to play the game for whatever reason. And as a grown man, and I often play with other grown men, I watch them yell at a ball that can't hear them. They tell it all sorts of things. Get up, sit down, spin, bite hard, get left, get out of the trees. And again, the ball can't hear them. But as they yell these things, they then get very angry when the ball doesn't listen. And you'll maybe see a club propelling through the air. You'll see all sorts of unusual behavior. You'll see players spending hundreds of dollars on golf clubs when what they really needed to do is spend a few dozen dollars on lessons because the best clubs in the world wouldn't be any help to them. So it's a crazy game. I love it. This is the 20th anniversary of my primary program, Michigan Golf Live. So we've been at it for quite some time, actually traveling the world and showing off great places to play. And So that's kind of one of that. That's a big passion for me. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the other half is actually doing things that matter, and that's kind of fun too.
So my curiosity is, what are professional golfers' opinions on mini golf? So does Tiger Woods go to the pirate putt and does he have a good time there, or is he just too good at putting at this point to enjoy it?
No, I think that if they have their kids with them, they will go and do fun things like that. You have to remember that if you're a full-time golfer, whether it's on the PGA Tour, the LPGA, the Tour Champions, whatever the setting is, when you're not practicing diligently or competing, you really just want to get away from the game. You really don't have this desire to go to Topgolf or go to the local Pirates Adventure Park and get the orange golf ball and the $3 putter and try to fit it through the clown's mouth. You probably just want to go to a movie, read a book, or maybe do nothing whatsoever. I'm not a professional golfer, but I play one on TV, which means we edit heavily. And people who see people see my game, they see my swing, and they think, man, you must just almost be on
heavily.
Tour. Yeah, and I say to them, because here's what happens. They see the TV show, and then they invite me to come be like the guest at their charity outing. And I'm going to sit on a par 3 all day. I'm doing this tomorrow, as a matter of fact. We need you to come to our charity event, and all day we're going to put you on this par 3, and you can hit shots with every group that comes through, and they can use your shots, and they're going to love it because they've seen you on TV. And then I just severely disappoint an awful lot of people. And I try to remind them, listen, folks, what you see on TV is never real, especially when it comes to my show. But we have this affinity for people who can play the game really well. I'm not bad at it, but I'm certainly not about to get out on tour and make a living. We would be sitting here with no electricity and no food in the house if that was our only source of income.
Yeah, my odds aren't much better of winning that $10 million, even for second place, with my one golf lesson.
Yeah, I'm sure you're better than all three of us.
Well, the bar is high from what I can tell. So beating the three of you might be my greatest career accomplishment.
All right, I think we can dive into our question for the day, where we're gonna mess with sports worse than you do on TV, and we're gonna say, what if all sports were played in zero gravity? And Ben, I don't think you're not doing golf, but tell us what you did, Ben.
So I took a look at baseball, and really I saw issues in 4 key areas of baseball, which are pitching, hitting, fielding, and base running, which you may have realized comprise all of baseball.
Hot dog seems still okay, though. We're good there, right?
I don't know how ketchup works, though, so who knows? So let's sort of start with pitching. I think that's a good place to start. Normally, when a ball is pitched, there's really like 3 forces that affect it. So gravity, drag, and the Magnus effect, which we'll get to in a second. But drag is unaffected, slows the ball down, easy enough. Gravity, obviously, is gone. A pitch, from the time it leaves the pitcher's hand to when it actually reaches home plate, will drop about 3 feet, which obviously now will not happen. It kind of just flies straight.
Easier for the pitcher?
Well, sort of, because I think it's pretty hard to actually throw a ball several feet below where you're trying to. So I think we're going to have to replace, right now there's a pitcher's mound, obviously it's about 10 inches up. We're going to have to replace that with a pitcher's pit, almost, to sort of get them.
just sink it to 3 feet.
Yeah, just on the right level, But then there's also sort of another force I mentioned there, which is the Magnus effect, which the Magnus effect is basically when an object is a cylinder or a sphere is spinning rapidly and moving through the air, there's a force on it that pulls it in the direction of the spin. So the way a curveball works, it's spinning very rapidly. The average curveball was about 2,500 revolutions per minute. Spins very rapidly, that pulls the ball to that direction. That still happens, but importantly, one of the types of fastball, the 4-seam fastball, is actually thrown with backspin, which is it pulls the ball up. Now, normally, what that does is just kind of make it, drop less quickly.
Make it go straight.
Yeah. It still drops, but
yeah,
less quickly than a regular, thrown ball would. But if there's no gravity, that ball is going to actually move up. So that's a kind of important extra pitch that you have now, is a ball that literally goes up. The one other problem with pitching, so those are both kind of, that's kind of a positive. The one negative is that As with most athletic actions, your legs and rest of your body are actually very important. And in order to do that, you're going to have to actually, press off against the ground. And I don't believe that without gravity, you can actually generate enough force. So I propose in the middle of the pitcher's pit is a pitcher's pole. And the pitcher's pole is for them to push themselves into the ground so they can still get that force on the ball to get the pitch out. So it also stops them from hilariously just sort of cartwheeling through the air after they throw the pitch, which would be great, admittedly, but probably not as effective. So
now I just imagine the pitcher spinning around a pole to wind up.
Oh, definitely. It's going to be great. There's going to be windmilling around there. It's going to be so much fun. They're going to get very dizzy. So hitting, you kind of have a similar problem. Hitting, actually, there's the fewest issues of any of these aspects of the game, it turns out.
Really?
You do have, once again, the problem that you have to hold yourself in place. And I tried for a long time. You can't really hold a pole because you need, obviously, both hands to swing a baseball bat. And I eventually decided that literally what you're going to do is just strap your feet onto the ground. And you might be asking, well, that's going to, add some complications when it comes to, running. It turns out you're going to have some time. Because basically at that point, hitting's the same. Strap your feet down. There's probably a little bit of give so you can, pick your lead foot up and everything. But you can sort of, hold yourself in place for the actual batting. Once the ball is hit, now obviously, it's not going to drop. So this is going to be probably our biggest shift. I don't think you can have outdoor baseball stadiums anymore because home runs get pretty easy in that case.
Just tap it.
There's a
go home run.
long fly ball.
They're all pretty long. Yeah.
It's going! It's going! It's going! It's still going!
So now pretty much there already are, domed baseball stadiums where you have, a covered stadium either because it's too hot or I guess not really as many because they're too cold, but, Tropicana Field down in Tampa Bay is, or I guess technically St. Petersburg, is a covered field. They're all going to kind of be like that. You might be asking, well, in that case, how do you get a home run? And I think they're all going to be in the park. And I think there's going to be more than you expect because basically the ball is just going to shoot off in a direction and kind of just go until it ricochets off of something. And it's not really... it'll slow down from drag, but it's going fast enough that's going to take a while. So it's pretty much going to be a very fun ping-pong-like effect as fielders are flinging themselves up through the air trying to catch it in flight. I will say, I don't think that just a regular field is going to work because of this newly three-dimensional aspect you have going. I guess it's always three-dimensional, but you know what I mean?
Baseball in 3D.
Right. So I think there's going to be, I don't know if they're walls or there's going to be things for fielders to hold on to suspend themselves.
More poles and more pits.
There's going to be a lot of, well, probably not pits, but
Not
yes,
pits.
poles are going to be heavily featured.
They're fielders' features.
Right, yeah. So it's going to be a lot of flinging themselves towards the ball and sort of swarming and trying to sort of corral it as the batter is frantically unstrapping their feet from the restraints.
Seems like a good opportunity to have obstacle courses in the middle.
I mean, it's basically just going to be a giant obstacle course. That's kind of how it has to work.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is going to make the ball's flight even more complicated because it's going to ping pong off of those, too.
Does the requisite 30 seconds of the ball just flying straight up into the ceiling and then the baseball player unstrapping their feet kind of kill the tension a little bit?
Well, no,
Does it
because
build the tension.
Because the thing to remember is that in that time, there's going to be 5 or 6 guys who are frantically looking at it and then just launching themselves into the path of the ball, but also hopefully not into each other.
And hopefully not just missing the path of the ball, because that's an embarrassing miss.
Also probably painful. It's going to be a pretty dangerous sport. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. But then we have to actually get to base running, which is also pretty difficult without gravity because running implies, pushing off the ground. So I think I actually played with for a while trying to figure out how feasible having a wall to launch yourself towards the base would be. By the way, the base is clearly now also a wall or something at this point because you're not going to be able to get onto a base and stay there. Trying to figure out how to get yourself to the base. And I think the best option is basically you're going to have, I can't decide if it's actually a cable or just a horizontal pole to pull yourself along.
A pulley
So now
system.
instead of running, you are extended horizontally, pulling yourself arm over arm as fast as possible.
Which I think is pretty fast because you don't have anything slowing you down except wind resistance. So it's
Right.
going to be more like, how
pull.
hard are you willing to hit that wall to get your single?
Exactly. And then, of course, if you're trying to, get a double or a triple or a home run, you have to stop yourself and change your direction, which is pretty tricky, actually, when all you have is a pull and a wall to collide with. So I think that's sort of how baseball looks now is weird pitches because they can go literally any direction. When the ball is put in play, you're going to have a combination. I'm imagining the broadcast is like a picture-in-picture thing where you have a small window of the batter's like feet in close-up as they're like, I don't know if it's like Velcro or what, but as they're like unfastening whatever it is. And then just this ballet of outfielders like flying across each other trying to catch the ball. And then this like weird arm-based race to the bases that eventually ends in, I didn't even get to like throwing the ball as a fielder is going to be harder because you're going to have to find one of those platforms and push off of that. It's going to be very sloppy and excellent. And that's where I actually think that the restraints are a good thing.
Is it even possible to throw a ball like mid-air, like zero gravity?
So technically, yes, but it would be entirely
Spin around.
You could only use like your shoulder down. Like you can't actually I guess you could maybe like torque your torso a little bit, but you can't get anywhere near as much power as you'd be able to
Right.
in a regular throw.
Yeah, I mean, you have a good amount of, you have a decent amount of power because you do have the whole swing of the arm, you have that whole moment arm going.
Right. It's just
which
going
helps
to
out.
throw your body around when you do it.
Yeah, the question is what's going to happen to you, like what you're going to look like after you do that motion, because now you're probably like spinning idly in the air or something.
Right. Yeah, you're waiting for someone else to fly around and kick you back into position.
The whole thing that you're talking about with baseball reminds me of a classic Stephen Wright bit. I don't know if you guys if you know who Stephen Wright is, but he's from Boston, and that's where you are, right?
Yeah.
So do you know him?
He's the knuckleballer, right?
No, Stephen Wright,
no.
the comedian.
Oh wow, there was also a knuckleballer named Stephen Wright.
Yeah,
okay.
the very, very monotone comedian. He's the best.
Yeah, from Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, got it, yeah.
He says, I was a young boy growing up in Canada, and I worked in a planetarium, and we had a softball team, and we would play other planetariums in the area. But to practice, since we didn't really know softball, we would line up under the stars or planets. I was in center field, so I always stood under Mars. The left fielder was under Neptune, and the right fielder was under Saturn. And then one day we had an away game outdoors. We were way too far apart.
Perfect.
Oh,
One of my favorites. One of my
That's a great
favorites.
one.
Yeah, he's great.
But yeah, so I think it would be definitely a very different sport. That's no question about that.
Where do you put the people?
The
Yeah, is
people.
it all the same positions?
Oh no, I think
No.
he means the
audience.
Oh, the
Yeah.
audience.
I imagine that all the walls are transparent.
How about Velcro? I mean, the fans Velcro to the seats. That'd be outstanding. Whenever there was a standing moment, you would hear this collective ripping
That
sound.
would be great.
When they do the wave.
Well, it's like instead of applauding, you just stand up and sit down.
And the guy who had too many nachos was releasing some other sounds, but he just kept blaming it on the Velcro.
It's perfect. I see no flaws.
Velcro is notoriously easy to clean, so of course
Right, yes.
sanitation is going to be top notch in that stadium.
So yeah, so that is baseball. I think it is, obviously very different, but I think still entertaining. Maybe more entertaining.
I'd watch it.
I'd watch it.
I'm also gonna circle back one more time and say nachos is probably not the ideal zero gravity food.
Oh, definitely not. Serious question though. What ballpark food can you eat in zero gravity? Cotton candy. Cotton candy. Well, we got one.
Anything with a condiment on it is already just immediately problematic.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to need the really long straws that you can just keep affixed to your mouth. So
Exactly.
You've seen the guy with the beer hard hats with the holders on each side and the things coming down, the straws coming down into either side of his mouth. That's what you have to have, because then if you are floating, at least that's going with you.
Exactly. Those are mandatory for all drinks.
Just liquidize all your food and eat that way.
Exactly right. And what sounds more delicious than a liquidized ballpark frank?
Nothing.
Delicious.
I just think that in real life, the beer hat, I just realized to be the perfect solution to me not drinking enough water, because if it was always just right there, I would drink a lot of water during the day. Except for the fact I would just look so dang silly doing it.
Why don't you just get a water bottle?
Well, one man's silly is another man's fashion.
This is true. You're a trendsetter. Just tell yourself that every morning when you wake up.
No, I think this is exactly the situation that proves it false.
Fair. Anyway, that is pretty much what I have. Bill, what'd you do?
Well, in the world of golf and zero gravity, I've got a series of negatives and positives because this can work, but we have to have a few ground rules, no pun intended, here to get things started, because this is a game that requires some attachment to the ground. So, for instance, on the first tee, and the fans are gathered around, and they announce, and now on the first tee, the winner of the 2019 Screen Door Open, it is Tim Thompson, and Tim reaches down to try to tee his ball up, and in zero gravity, he's floating, the tee's floating, the ball's floating, the people are floating, and it's going to be really, really difficult to get the competition started for anybody. And even if it's not a competition, you tell your buddies, we're going to meet on Saturday morning at 9, and you all just kind of go floating in some general area. So I'm going to propose, and I don't know the science behind this. I don't know the amount of weight or weighted belts or weighted vests one would need to override the zero gravity. I'm guessing it's quite heavy.
You'd basically have to make yourself heavy enough that if you were pushed down, your momentum would keep you close enough, like you wouldn't move because you had so much momentum. It would be a lot.
It would be. And part of the challenge, of course, is that golf generally requires some flexibility, the ability to turn, rotate, generate torque, drive through the ball, and probably not float away.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Ideally.
In all my experience in the game, ideally, you want to be able to stay in the property. So our first negative is it's going to be really darn tough to tee the ball up. However, our first positive is that if you manage to figure out how to make it all happen and you make solid contact with the ball, your long-held dreams of being one of the longest hitters in the game will come true. You sit up on a tee box of a 620-yard par 5, and you think to yourself, man, this is, in normal golf, this is a driver and then a 3-wood and then probably a solid 8-iron in, because that's a long hole. Mm-hmm. In zero gravity, it's essentially a putter. And that's it.
Yeah, just a little tippy tap.
Just get her go. Just like go to your home, ball. Yeah, just go to your home. So you've got potential there if you can make contact. Now, again, golf is a game of managing your mistakes. So if you're able to minimize how far off line you're hitting it in normal golf, you can scramble your way around, try to save a few pars here and there. In zero gravity golf, your errors are cataclysmic.
Right.
You can't just say to your playing partners, man, I just feel like I'm a little bit off today, because a shot that you intended to go from Boston to Michigan essentially ends up in Dallas, Texas.
Right.
That's more than a little bit off. The other thing that happens on a negative front is the pace of play is going to be brutal. We've been talking a lot in the industry, the golf industry, the last few weeks about how slow the guys on tour seem to be these days and taking forever. Well, move this into zero gravity, and the dream of the 4-hour round is pretty much gone unless you're all tethered somehow. Because, again, when that wayward drive ends up in 6 states over, somebody's got to chase it. And I don't think your caddy wants to go that far. So finding the ball can be rather difficult. It's not as if you say, yeah, I think I saw it go in behind these trees. No. Now you have to call home, tell your wife, honey, I just sprayed one into the Pacific time zone.
Yeah, I think I saw one going behind Wyoming.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a while. I'm in the Grand Tetons now. I thought I thought you were playing in Georgia. I was, and then I got to hole number 2. So we've got some issues on finding the ball, especially when poorly struck. Now, a positive: the zero gravity has no impact on your apparel decisions. And as we all know, golf is in many ways connected to horrendous fashion choices. So the positive is you can still dress poorly in zero gravity. Overweight men can still wear medium neon shirts pretending they're Ricky Fowler in zero gravity. And they are thankful for the zero gravity because it maybe hides a little bit of what the shirt can't cover up. I'm not sure how all that comes together.
Well, maybe they need to wear a coat in case they hit it into Canada where it's a bit cooler. You got to prep for all the weathers.
Well, your golf bag has compartments now for a little bit of everything from full parkas down to tank tops because you may end up in Jamaica. So you've got to really be fully prepared. And again, you may have to burn a few weeks of vacation to get around in.
But it's great, though. You can pack as much as you want because the bag doesn't weigh anything anymore.
That's true. Your caddy's not going to complain. If you have a caddy with you, he's no longer going to say, boss, are you carrying a ton of bricks in here? No, it's everything I own. Another negative, because we have a lot of golfers that don't like to walk the course, and in zero gravity, that's no big deal. But it's awfully tough to drive a cart in zero gravity.
True.
Until we get, I've dreamed of this. I'm probably older than you guys. I have dreamed of the day when we were all traveling around like the Jetsons. So it was zero gravity, but it was kind of controlled zero gravity with some hovercraft and things like that. If that were to happen, then I'm signing up. I'm joining the Zero Gravity Country Club. But right now, with the four-wheeled, four-tire golf carts, I was in one earlier today, I can't see that being terribly manageable in zero gravity, especially for those golfers who maybe have had a couple adult beverages and are already a risk behind the wheel. Now it gets a little bit even more rough. However, one more positive. When your anger flashes and you decide that it's time, I have a friend named Tom. My friend named Tom has a bit of a temper on the golf course. And
You don't know if this is a euphemism or your real friend
No,
named
this
Tom.
is legit. This is my friend named Tom. This is legit. He until recently, he used to carry in his bag a club that he never hit. It was just his throwing club. Because he didn't want to damage any of the clubs that were in his normal rotation.
That's smart.
I would never assign that label to Tom, but that is what he did. And so in zero gravity, when you're really wanting to vent and let it all out, the club throw would be epic because you're angry, you let it go like a little Happy Gilmore, and instead of going in the pond, it goes to Antarctica. The only downside, again, is that an unsuspecting bystander 7 states away might be decapitated by something they never saw coming, and you just let your throwing club go and lost control over it. So there's kind of a plus and minus to all of it. So having said all that, in zero gravity golf, I'd like to think that the playing field is somewhat leveled so that all of us who have dreamed of the day that we could win our green jacket, we could be the next Tiger Woods or Brooks Koepka or Rory McIlroy or Jack Nicklaus or whatever. We've all had that dream. In zero gravity golf, I think you have a chance. I think you've got a chance to make history in the game. And it's never going to happen in our current situation with actual gravity.
Right.
So let's start the movement. Let's get rid of gravity. We protest everything else in this country. Why don't we start protesting gravity? I think
what's
it's
up with
time.
this?
I think it's time we have a big demonstration outside of probably outside the White House, because most everything else in this nation seems to be the fault of the president, even if it's not. Let's blame him for gravity and let's get gravity out of here.
Our protest will be only helium balloons.
Nice.
Everyone brings a lawn chair and enough helium balloons to float it slightly off the ground.
That's all we need. And if you've ever seen that Darwin Awards moment when the guy decided he wanted to experience zero gravity, you can look this up. This is a few years ago now. But he'd had a few beverages, and he went out into his front yard. He sat in his lawn chair. This is a true story. He went out in his lawn chair in his front yard, and he had purchased a bunch of big-size weather balloons, and he filled them with helium, and he had tethered his lawn chair to the yard, and he had on his lap a 6-pack and a BB gun. This is legit. You got to look this up in the Darwin Awards.
I've actually
room.
heard this story. This is 100% true.
So this guy cuts the tether thinking he will gently float up into the atmosphere and be able to look out over the neighborhood. And as he wanted to come back down, he would just shoot out a balloon or two. He miscalculated. And he is probably the person best qualified to talk about what life would be like in zero gravity, because he rocketed into the atmosphere up through the initial layers of like breathable oxygen and began getting up into where commercial airliners go in the 30,000 foot range. He's not quite that high, but he's starting to get low on oxygen, breathable oxygen. Airplanes have now seen this bizarre thing. You talk about freaking out a pilot.
Right.
And the guy decides, while he still has consciousness, to start trying to shoot out some of the balloons. And he miscalculates yet again. Hard to believe. I know such a rocket scientist here from the very start.
Yes, so much forethought up to this point.
Hey, he's gotten closer to space than us.
And he starts plummeting down quickly. Somehow the guy didn't die, but he has gone down as the all-time winner in the Darwin Awards for the survival of the mentally unfit. And that's zero gravity. That's a sport that the lawn chair Olympics is something that you should probably add to your rundown if you're going to really tackle this, and try to get that guy on the podcast.
Oh my God.
The ultimate
Well,
guest.
I mean, he survived, so I mean, he's perfect.
He's got to be sitting around. He's either working on his memoirs or he's starting his own podcast. I don't know which.
Yeah, he's finding more balloons,
Yeah, he's buying more balloons. He's gonna try again.
but slightly fewer this time.
Slightly fewer balloons and a slightly bigger BB gun is what he's buying.
Man, oh man, it takes all kinds.
All right, does that put the metaphorical ball in my court?
I have tapped in on 18 for my birdie, and my round is done.
That was a lot of golf words. I'm gonna assume that means it's my turn.
I'll just say golf thing, golf thing, golf thing, your turn.
Well, I did not cover golf. My sport I covered is actually football. And I think I actually found a real life way to make football much, much, much better. So there are ways, well, there's one specific way to experience zero G in the real world. You can do it tomorrow if you wanted. So there's a service called Zero G Planes. You can purchase a ticket for $5,500, or you can rent the whole plane for $165,000.
That's the vomit comet, isn't it?
The vomit
That's
comet,
the one.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you know it. So this plane basically goes up in the air in a parabolic shape, like going over a big hill. And on the downswing of the hill, the acceleration of the plane exactly matches that of gravity. So inside the plane, you actually experience zero Gs for about 20 to 30 seconds before it kind of levels out, which is actually kind of perfect because 20 to 30 seconds is about exactly the amount of time you need for a football play.
So you're going to play this game in the vomit comet.
You are going to you're going to make the biggest vomit comet that you can.
There's not a lot of space inside.
You're going to take the outside walls, make them grass, draw your lines, and you are going to make your football game in this plane and do your game in there. So the first thing I was reading about is how much time do you actually have to be weightless. So 20 to 30 seconds is how much you get at each time you descend, but it has to go back up again, to go and do that. So they say that for your 90-minute flight time, they do like 15 descends and you get a total of 8 minutes of weightlessness. So out of 90 minutes, you get 8 minutes of game time. And so I always knew football was a bit of a slow game about how much, there's a lot of waiting around and then hurry up. But what I didn't figure is that 8 minutes per 90 minutes is actually more action than a real-life regular football game.
This is sadly true.
The New York Times did a story where they calculated it all. They did the average it out. A football game typically lasts 3 hours and 12 minutes, of which there is only 11 minutes of actual game time. So if you flew the plane for 3 hours, you get 16 minutes of game time, which is almost 50% more than what you're currently getting watching regular football. So first thing I did was I went and found my plane. So you're going to need a big one. So I went and found the biggest plane that has flown, which is the Hughes H-4 Hercules, also nicknamed the Spruce Goose, which was built during World War II. They call it the Spruce Goose because it was built from wood because of wartime restrictions on the use of aluminum and concerns about weight. So they didn't build it out of metal. This thing was actually made out of wood, and they call it the Spruce Goose, but it's actually made mostly of birch, which I kind of find funny. I guess the
Just wanted the
the
rhyme.
2-word name
Yeah.
where one of them's birch isn't as family friendly as the spruce goose.
Sure, there's something that rhymes with birch.
Yeah, but it's a swear word, and we're not going to say it here. So, this plane, wingspan 320 feet, weight of 400,000 pounds. I don't care about those measurements. What I care about is the center bit, the fuselage. The height and width are both about 30 feet. So, my question was, is this enough to play a game of football? Because, there's going to be a lot of players around, and is this 30-foot space going to be enough to actually make plays and have it be reasonably balanced, or do you need to add or subtract players? So what I did was very scientific. I took the width of a regular football field of 160 feet. You have a team of 11 players. Figure they can carry a 6-foot wide area or so. So with 11 people at 6 foot each across 160 feet, you cover about 41% of the field area that you can make passes past, I guess. If you go to the airplane, now you're working in like 3D, so you have a 2D cross-section of area you got to worry about instead of a line. So 30 foot in a circle is 700 square feet. And now if you make a football player kind of a 6-foot circle of I guess, football blocking power, divided by the 30-foot circle, you actually have 44% of the field covered, which is almost exactly the same as the 41%. So theoretically, you cover the same amount of area in a 30-foot circle in zero gravity as you would on a regular football field. So technically, the difficulty should be about the same to make plays, just based on player coverage.
That is a lot of math right there.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we do here.
That's a lot of what I do here. I like finding numbers to multiply together. That's what I do in my free time.
Marcus makes a lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the whole length of the plane is about 180 feet. So I think it's long enough to get a good game going. It's not like you're going to be doing too many, I guess you could make really long kicks. They would just keep going. But I'd say 200 feet's about enough. It's fairly close to the about 300 feet of a regular football field. So how's this game actually going to look? We kind of have two options with the lineup. The first one is that you line up in a football, in the line, in 2D space, across just the center diameter of this airplane. So you just make a straight line. Yeah, going across. And maybe a little bit of a circle or something. This kind of puts you in a weird spot where the players near the edges can go to the edges and push off the edges of the plane to get some momentum going, and the people in the middle are kind of stranded.
Right.
So I think the way that works better is it starts with maybe the quarterback dead center in the middle of the plane, and the rest of both teams hugging the wall around the circle. And then the second the play starts, everyone just springs off the wall and in a million different directions, which I think will just be a very cool moment to go through. Like Ben, I kind of looked at the different aspects of football: running, throwing, tackling, catching, all those. And so I'm going to start off with running. So like I said, you kind of have to springboard off the sides to get momentum, but there are other ways. Number one, you could also use other players to springboard off of.
It is a contact sport.
It is definitely a contact sport, and I think it's going to be a lot of strategic ping-ponging between different players to get where you want to go. The other option is, we're in zero gravity, but there is still air, so you could still, quote-unquote, swim through it. So you could give players very large fans or fins that they could then use to propel themselves through the air around the airplane.
Flippers.
Big flippers, because flippers work in water because
Yeah.
water's very dense, but in air you're going to need really big flippers. So I kept going back and forth on this idea, and I think the big problem is that it makes blocking the throws a bit too easy, because you can just put up your big old fan feet and block all the different throws. So not sold on that particular aspect of it. So you spring it off the walls and off of people. Then we move on to the throwing. So Ben, you talked a little bit about throwing, about how you actually have to throw lower than you think because of you're not figuring in the gravity like you would naturally. But another aspect of the throwing is the momentum after the throw. So if you push something forward, it pushes, Newton's law of motion. That's the one. You get pushed back with an equal amount of force. And normally, if you're just standing on the ground, on the earth, the friction of your feet on the ground is enough to keep you where you're standing. In zero gravity, it's not. So a regular football weighs about a pound, and a quarterback can throw it 60 miles an hour. So if they throw that ball that 1 pound ball, 60 miles an hour. The momentum is going to push back on the football player. But since they weigh a lot more than the football, say 240 pound player, if they throw the ball at 60 miles an hour, they're only going back at 0.25 miles an hour because the ball has so little momentum because it's so light. But I think I like the idea that you moving the ball moves you as well. So what if we just made the ball heavier and start really taking advantage of this zero-G environment?
How heavy are you talking?
So what I did, which actually ended up being the number I kind of wanted, was I just said, what if the football is just made of lead? So if you take the regular size football, regulation size, and make it out of lead, it weighs 112 pounds, which is going to be about half the weight of a player. And so now suddenly all the throws and the catches and, the ball's momentum really plays into all this other pushing and pulling that's going on in this aircraft. Plus, I think it's kind of a cool idea that instead of having like a time clock to start the play, you just get to start the play when the ball is light enough to lift. So the ball can just like start on the ground, and then finally when it weighs less than like 10 pounds, you can start, start actually pushing it around. So now we have a big fat ball. We got players springing off all the walls. And now we got to go back. Now we got to go to the actual fun part of football, which is all the tackling and body bumping and push and pull in and trip them up that they do. So momentum works kind of funny when there's not like gravity to kind of make things make sense. So real base case, if you're standing still and some dude your same size tackles you and he's going like, say 10 miles an hour, what happens is he hits you and now your momentum kind of combines. And now you just both move together in the same direction he was going at half the speed. So if he hits you at 10, now you're just this clump of two people that are slowly drifting off to the side at 5 miles an hour. So that's the base case. But of course you can do other things. So I think the real thing that you get the advantage on is if you kick off each other. So, if you push off the ground, you have, your leg strength working just for you, and it works against gravity, and you get however much speed and height off that. In zero gravity, you would go as fast as you go to the very start of your jump, and then you'd stay that fast. And if you and somebody else put your feet together and both pushed, you would go in opposite directions at the same speed. Where it gets interesting, I think, is if you combine a big guy and a small guy. So if you both push off in opposite directions, you both get about half, you split that momentum and you go at a speed in each direction. And if you're the same weight, you go the same speed. But if you're not the same weight, if you got like a 500-pound guy and a 100-pound guy, and they both push off each other, the 100-pound guy is going to be going 5 times as fast as the 500-pound guy was going. So I think your running backs are just like, I guess you just repurpose jockeys. You just steal them from the horse tracks.
So now you actually want smaller people.
Now you want these tiny people because they're going to be like bullets going through this plane.
They also get destroyed if they get tackled.
Well, I was actually going to say, if they catch the ball weighs as much as they do.
The ball is made of lead.
So you said it's like 112 pounds? Like, they're going to die.
All right, football's a dangerous sport.
They knew what they signed up for.
Well, I think it's important also for you to point out that no matter what shape this competition takes, my Detroit Lions will still lose.
This is true.
Yeah, I mean, I saw them try to play in zero gravity. It was not pretty that last season. Whew, boy.
It has never been pretty in my lifetime, and it's not going to start even in zero gravity.
You know how I know they're bad? Because I don't follow a lot of football. So I follow football kind of tangentially, mostly through you, Ben.
Yeah.
When I go hang out with you and you're like, oh, the football's on. So I have an idea of the names of most of the teams. I have never heard of the Detroit Lions in my life.
Well, I mean, they're one of the oldest teams in the league, but they're so bad every year that it's comical. And meanwhile, you guys are sitting there in the Boston area just
everyone hates
raking
us.
in championships. I don't, because you have my boy Brady on your, leading the team.
Right.
But, he's a Michigan man and I'm a Michigan guy. So, but having said all that, I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but I'm just saying that zero gravity would have no impact whatsoever on the Lions' Super Bowl chances.
I will say a good sort of standpoint for sort of the way that the history of the Detroit Lions franchise has gone. They have had two like generational talents in Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, who both retired early rather than continue playing football for the Detroit Lions.
Yep, turned down fabulous wealth, turned down a place in history. Barry quit. Barry quit before he was just a couple of yards away from the all-time rushing record, but he so detested playing for that team that he gave up immortality for it and just said, I'm leaving. Goodbye.
I'd rather not. Everybody. I'm good.
Well, I mean, if he was playing in zero gravity football, he would have been, retired even sooner after he was suddenly accelerated to, 120 miles an hour and shot out a plane window.
Well, that's the one thing that you're missing, and as not a diehard sports fan, we like to believe Barry Sanders kind of played in zero gravity anyways.
Right.
And was sort of in his own little world. That's why nobody could lay a hand on him. It's still, even that ability to not be impeded by gravity in any way could not save this team from its debacle-like status. So
we had actual wizards on our team, and we couldn't make it work.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they were not impacted by the things mere mortals are impacted by. However, a curse came along with it, which essentially was, at any given moment, in any possible or inconceivable way, you will break the hearts of every fan that has Honolulu blue and silver in their closet. Just be prepared.
Man, that's pretty rough. I thought I could relate because I grew up in New York originally, and I rooted for all the B team New Yorks, like the Mets and the Jets and the Islanders, not the Yankees and the Giants and the Rangers. And so my teams lost a lot.
But they didn't lose always. They lost a lot, but they didn't lose always. And that's the difference.
They didn't lose always. I will never know the pain of living in Michigan and rooting for sports.
It can be very challenging at times.
So that's why you follow golf, huh?
That's right. That's right. There's less disappointment. At least in golf, if you're disappointed, it's because you've performed poorly yourself. There's no defense in golf, and so it's just on you. It's user error. But I'm much better accepting my own shortcomings in that game than sitting on the couch and watching highly paid professionals play with the same level of commitment to the fundamentals as a sixth grade Pop Warner team.
Right.
So that's where it gets a little difficult.
I like that we opened up this this sore button issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you guys have ruined my night. Now I need therapy.
I'm gonna go watch old replays of the Detroit Lions and drink heavily.
Well, just do this. Just go onto YouTube and search for Barry Sanders highlights, and you'll be amazed. And then if you Google Detroit Lions Super Bowl victories, it'll be the only search you do on Google that produces no results.
Oh, man. All right, guys, time for the Would You Rather. And Bill, I'm going to start with you because you are the guest. Would you rather never need sleep or food ever again?
Wow. Wouldn't need it?
You wouldn't need it. You could still do it. You wouldn't need it.
That's a good call. I love both of those things.
Yeah.
I like to sleep and I love some food. But if I could get by and thrive and be healthy and function and continue to produce things, I would rather be able to do without sleep.
You'd gain so much more time.
You would get so much done. And if you didn't need it, if your body didn't need to restore and recharge and all those things and have little dust mites crawl in your mouth while you're sleeping and all those important things, I would just as soon stay awake and be productive and get things done at a time of day when everybody else is sleeping. There's no interruptions. So if everybody's like, I'm tired, I'm going to go to bed pretty soon, you're like, yeah, go right ahead. I don't sleep ever. And so
Just
I'm going to
casually
get a
drop
lot of
that in.
Yeah, I don't sleep ever, and I don't have to. We all have. We've met these annoying people who are like, oh, I tend to get by on about 3 hours and 10 minutes a night before I get up at 3 a.m. to do my workout. I swim at 5, and then I go biking at 6:30, and then I'm in the office by 7:30, and you just want to slap them upside the head. I wouldn't mind being one of those people as long as I didn't have to sleep.
Right.
I'm in. Sign me up.
The other thing, too, is that half of why taking a nap in the middle of a Sunday afternoon is so great is that you could be doing anything and instead you're using your time just sleeping. If you never had to sleep, every time you slept would feel like that. It would be so decadent every single time. I love
You'd
that
just be
feeling.
like showing off.
Exactly. I could do anything. I'm going to not do anything instead.
So I'm going to talk the other side of the coin for a little bit because I grew up in a family. So my family owns a restaurant. I eat lots of good food. I love food. But even so, God, I just really hate having to come up with 3 meals a day. Like, no one told me that adulthood was just having to come up with dinner every single night for the rest of your life and having to deal with that. Because, God, it's the worst. It's just absolutely the worst.
You would save a lot of money.
You would save a lot of money, actually.
It's not, the money is nice. I'll say that. Like, you could save the money, and then, like, you could say that the money you save will let you spend more time on doing your things anyway, because you could work less. But just the mental load of being like, ugh, I have to survive, use food to keep myself alive for, like, the next 6 hours. It drives me batty. I have times where I just don't eat lunch at work because I can't be bothered to figure out what to eat for lunch.
I see your point. However, I have to go hard yes on not sleeping.
Yeah, I think I go sleep too. Just the time that you gain is invaluable.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day I would agree with that too. But I think it might also be because we're all hobby people. We use our free time pretty thoroughly, and having more of it would be just so nice. I could get like things done. Or I would probably just sign up for like another 8 hours worth of things that I don't have time for.
And then complain more.
Yeah. But I have so much more to complain about. It would be glorious.
So much more time to complain in.
Okay, so we all said sleep. That's easy.
Yeah, that's the rare 4-person agreement on it. Would you rather? And before we go, Bill, is there anything where can we find you? Where your podcasts? What are they called?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'll run through them real quick for you. First of all, I can't imagine that there are a ton of golf crazy lunatics in your audience, but if there are, our main podcast is called the Four Golfers Network, FORE, as in what we yell when we're about to kill somebody with a golf ball. So it's the Four Golfers Network podcast. Comes out every Monday. Every Wednesday is actually my favorite thing that I do in the podcast world. It's called The Big Impact. And every Wednesday, it's also been turned into a radio program on several stations around the Midwest. We celebrate positive, inspiring, uplifting, and encouraging stories. And so every week, our featured guest is, well, we've had Hall of Fame athletes, we've had Grammy Award-winning musicians, we've had Purple Heart recipients, but my favorites are the people you've never heard of who have overcome some incredible obstacles and just have great stories to tell. We've had a double organ transplant recipient who got a new heart and liver on the same day, and he tells the story of how it all came about. We've had a blind adventurer who blind kayaked the Grand Canyon River, a Category 5 raging rapids. He's blind. And the way he explained how it happens and all this stuff, and he has a group called No Barriers. I mean, it's literally anything you can think of. As long as you have a positive story to share, it's our way of injecting positive content into a culture that's filled with negativity, and that's called The Big Impact. And if you want to look some of them up, all of our episodes are on our website at bigimpactradio.com. I love that show. It's so much fun because it gives you a charge every time I do an interview. I just love to do it. And then our third podcast is called the Marriage Talk Podcast. And I sit down with a licensed counselor and therapist, and he and his wife address questions from our listeners. And that comes out every Friday. And again, you can find that one at marriagetalk.org. And of course, they're all on iTunes and all the different places where podcasts are. And so if I were to promote one of those three above the others to your listeners, I'd really love to have you listen to The Big Impact. I think you'll like it. And if you enjoy, it's about 45 minutes long each week. And if you enjoy just hearing from people, I'll give you an example. This week we have a kid. He's 13 years old. His name is Leo. Leo has had over 30 surgeries and rounds of chemo treatment for cancer. And while he's laying in the hospital bed, unable to function, he decides he wants to make a difference in our culture. So he launches something called the Happiness Club, changing the world one smile at a time. And all the kid wants to do is have people follow his Facebook group. He has a goal of getting to 7 million followers. He has some VIPs on from it, like John Cena is part of his world, and some of these other WWE folks have come in. The Disney Corporation is taking part in the whole thing. And here's this kid with every excuse to be miserable who says, I'm not going to be miserable. Instead, I want more people to just be happy. And so in his own little kid way, he started the Happiness Club. And it's just amazing. It's cool stuff.
Yeah,
That sounds
you
great.
can't see here because we're an audio medium, but I just have a big ass smile on my face
same.
right now.
Yeah, it's really cool. A few weeks ago, I interviewed the Iditarod sled dog racing teacher. And you're like, what does that mean? Every year, they choose one teacher from the country to be the Iditarod teacher. And this person comes up for the race, is at every checkpoint, gets flown on little puddle jumper airplanes, and she is in charge of developing curriculum for classrooms around the world based on what happens at the Iditarod. So they're learning things about geography, about temperature, about teamwork, about efficiency, about survival, about all these different things that I would never think of. And we got to talk with her about the things that she learned on the trail of this remote race that has such a great history to it. Like I said, every week, it's just something different and quite fascinating. At least I think it is. And I think your listeners might enjoy it as well. So we'd love to have you check out any of our podcasts, but that one's probably the highlight for me because I don't know. I get a kick out of learning people's stories.
Yeah, I'm definitely
Yeah,
gonna do
me
it.
too.
Chris, why don't you tell me Bill does this really cool podcast? You're like, oh, he does some golf podcasts.
I didn't know
I'm like,
about
no,
this one, but I want to listen to it now.
Yeah, bigimpactradio.com. That's where we are.
Fantastic. And if you want more of the silly nonsense that we do here after your uplifting story over at Bill's podcast, you can join us next week where we answer the following question. Which Nicktoon character would win in a fight?